Good morning, Jeannie. You're still on mute. If you want to take yourself off, you may do that. I discovered there were some glitches, and so some people could register and some people couldn't. So we probably are going to have a smaller group today, but we're thrilled that you are here. And my partner in crime is Bret Ridgway, and I think we're going to wait a couple more minutes before we get started with the main event. So yeah, technology was not my friend this week by far, and I know other people were having some issues too. So it wasn't just me. I've had one person I know got their whole computer got hacked. Somebody else, their internet went kaflooey, and we were supposed to meet yesterday. So, sometimes stuff happens and you just got to go, okay, what's plan B or C or whatever? Because, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It just is what it is. So, oh my goodness. So how are you all this morning?
Very good.
I'm chipper.
I can see that. Jeannie, do you know Woody? I don't know if you do.
No.
Jeannie and I are on the board of Redwood Writers, and Woody and I are friends through the Bay Area Independent Publishers Association. And Bret and I we met two different places, and one of them, we're working on creating our signature programs. And the other place is through Grand Connection, which is this marvelous group of networking, and wonderful people are in it, all different kinds of professionals. And I'm very fortunate because, Bret, why don't you tell people about who you are? Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let folks know how wonderful you are?
Well, put me on the spot, huh?
Of course.
So, way back in 1995, I actually put up the first portal website in the plant engineering and maintenance industry. So back in those days, it was VHS tapes and books aimed at that particular niche. And around the same time frame, a guy called me up and asked me, because we had a joint venture, if I would handle the back sales table at his first internet marketing super conference. And that was back in 1999. And frankly, I didn't even know what backroom sales meant at that time. But I hadn't been to Las Vegas before, so I said, sure, I'll do it or whatever. So I went out to Vegas in 99. It was the Las Vegas Hilton at that time, and handled the back sales table for this guy. So I got to meet some of the speakers, and that basically led to a side business where we would provide the crew, and more importantly, the merchant account that it could handle a large sum of money in a short period of time, and we manage the back sales table. So we take care of all the money, pay the promoter, pay the speakers, etc., and do that for them. Well, as a result of that, started doing that for more and more promoters. And when one of them found out that we were doing product fulfillment for our own website, cornered me at an event and said, hey, Bret, will you do some product fulfillment for me? And so I'd been thinking about it for a while because it was a natural outgrowth of all the people that I had gotten to know in the industry. And so with another guy, put together the company called Speaker Fulfillment Services back in 2002 or 3. I don't remember which one it was now, but about 20 years ago. And Speaker Fulfillment Services is still going. But as a result of handling the backroom sales table, providing fulfillment services for some of the biggest names in the industries, and then eventually getting up on stage myself and sharing what I've learned about book marketing and information products and speaking. Basically, I kind of been behind the scenes for 25 years in the speaking industry. And so now I'm headed out on my own, so to speak, to share what I've learned in the industry and help people who wish to become speakers, get a better sense of what is involved in the industry and the pieces that they need to put into place in order to have a profitable speaking business. So.
And I just have to tell you, he's one of the nicest people I ever have met. With all the connections and all of the success he's had, you would think he would be kind of a, arrogant person, but he's not. He's very generous and very kind. And he's an extraordinarily good writer. I just got to read the next to the next draft before it goes into publication of his book about speaking, and I was blown away. The clarity and the ease with which I could navigate and understand everything that was there. I think it's going to be a dynamite book. So I'm very privileged. And I'll just give a little brief bit about me, because even though I know all of you who are here know me, we are recording this. And so for prosperity, I'm Judy Baker. And since 2011, I've been working with authors to help them understand that their book is part of their business, and that organic marketing works and all marketing is a conversation. That's something I learned when I worked with Robert Mondavi back in the late 80s. And Mr. Mondavi had a philosophy that everybody who worked at the winery was in sales, whether you were a groundskeeper, whether you were a VP of marketing, whether you were an administrative assistant. Everybody who represented Robert Mondavi needed to have that mindset that they were an embodiment of the company. And because of that, Mondavi was very successful. And I had a wonderful time working there. And I took that with me when I started my own business, originally working as a graphic designer and then later a coach to help small businesses develop their brands. And then my next progression was to focus on authors, because as it turned out, all of my clients were not only business owners, they were also authors. And so often people who have those two hats think that they're separate, but they really aren't. We are whole people. And that's how I work with my clients, that you, your book, and your business all matter, and they all influence each other. So when you are showing up, you're showing up as a business owner, an author, and a real genuine person. So that's about me. And I'm here in Sonoma, California. And this morning it's nice and bright and sunny, cold, but we are excited to share with you why speaking is one of the best ways you can monetize your book. And as Bret said, there are a lot of things you can do in addition to writing a really dynamite book that will propel you into higher revenue. And why don't we talk a little bit about, we're going to do this kind of conversationally, if you don't mind. Some of the things that we have both learned over the years. And Bret, why don't you talk to us a little bit about free versus paid and how that can really help you establish yourself as a speaker?
Sure. And before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to Michelle, who took the time to look through the new book and review it and all that. And it was much appreciated. Thank you, Michelle. But, as Judy said, when you get into the speaking industry, one of the first things that you're going to need to decide is what kind of speaker you want to be in terms of being a free versus a fee speaker. Now, a fee speaker is what you think of your typical keynote presentation, and these are the people that are paid a fee by an organization, typically a few hundred, few thousand or more, to go and basically deliver a message before their group. And then what you have besides that is what I call the free speaker, and that's a person who goes and speaks at an event without being paid any fee, but they're going to make their money by selling from the platform, some type of product or service on the back end. And I can tell you that in most cases, if you're a good platform seller, you can make far more money as a free speaker than you can as a fee speaker. I have a colleague who a few years ago was speaking at an event in the UK, and in one 90-minute presentation, he sold $995,000 worth of his training.
Wow.
Now, he would have to do a lot of speaking engagements at a keynote fee to make anywhere near that kind of money. And now, of course, he had to split part of it with the promoter, because in the event world where you're doing a sell from the platform type of engagement, typically the split between the promoter and the speaker is 50-50. So if you're selling something for $1,000, they're going to get 500 and you're going to get 500. Now, typically the event promoter will absorb the credit card fees and all that, but any cost associated with delivery of your product or service will fall on you. So again, you can make more money as a free speaker. Now, in the ideal world, you can do both. And I know very many keynote speakers who are paid good money to keynote, but they also have a strong back end set of products and services. So in their speaking engagements, they can direct people to whatever those products and services are. Now, Judy, one of the things that most people don't think about is speaking is an ideal way to sell more books, certainly. But you've got to keep in mind that when you go to an event where you're selling from the stage, the event promoter is probably primarily looking for somebody selling high ticket items. So you selling a $15 or $20 book from the stage isn't going to really float their boat, because they're not going to make a whole lot of money off you selling a low ticket item.
Right.
So that's why you got to have those higher ticket items on the back end. Now, in a corporate environment, or sometimes in an association type situation, you can get the organization to, maybe as part of your agreement with them, is purchase your books in advance to give to all their, employees or whoever's going to go through your presentation.
Right.
And that's wonderful when you can sell books in bulk like that. So if you are going into that type of situation, one of the things that's fairly common is in these corporations, the budget for buying books is a separate line item from paying for speakers to come in and do presentations. So you might need to plant that seed with them or whatever, but if you can get them to buy your book in bulk, great. And I would certainly encourage you to pursue that route if you can do it.
Well, you're bringing up an interesting point too, because sometimes you can, one of the people I know who has had a very successful career and he's now starting to phase out, but he would always make a proposal before he'd ever write the book to be sure that there was a market for it. And he would do the same thing. He would say, okay, I'm going to do a presentation on this book. And I want the organizer, they're going to pay up front before the event even happens. So he was guaranteed the money for the book, money for the, for speaking, and then he would go and create the product. So he was always testing before he sold. But not everybody knows how to do that. And maybe on the first book, it's a little bit less in, top of mind. But I love the idea of, when we're talking about these higher ticket items, something we're considering is something like a coaching program or a done for you service, something that is going to be, probably more than $1,000 at a pop. But when people like you, this is the other secret. If you do a book talk or you do any kind of speaking, people will buy what you're selling without you selling. So they like you, and then you can say, I've got this, I've got some more information, come see me at the back of the room if you're in a physical environment. And if you're online, you're going to have a landing page, which takes them to, here is what they can get, because they want more of you, because you've established the connection. They know, like, and trust you. The more they like you, the more they're going to buy. And that's true no matter if you're selling a $15 book or you're selling $1,000 or a $15,000 program. If people are excited and they feel like you can help them or entertain or educate, they will gravitate without you really having to do any hard selling. And that's what I like about speaking. I think it's more conversational.
Well, I think it's so critical to have those back end products. And if you've heard it once, you've heard it 100 times. I mean, the money isn't in the book, it's what the book leads to. And so you've got to be sure whenever you write a book that if you have or plan to have any kind of back-end products or services that you're going to be offering, that you use that book as a marketing mechanism to drive them to whatever those services are. So if you want to get on stages and speak, you need to drive them from the book to your speaker page online so they can book you and find out how they can get more of you in a in a live setting, so to speak.
I'm just curious if any of you have questions about what we've just covered, because this is really the crux of how speaking leads to more dollars. No questions? Okay. Well, then we'll keep moving on with this. And you know, and I know too, there is a difference between a live event in the same room and a virtual event. And there are a few things that are different, but they also are the same, because when you come across as someone who is helpful, that's going to show up whether you are on camera or you're on a stage. And the more you can be there as a solution, that's going to make a big difference in how people perceive you. Bret and I were talking a little bit earlier about one of the services that I've been using and he was curious about, but I have signed up to be on Podmatch. And Podmatch is a service that matches podcasters with podcast guests. And you can be both and still be registered there. And you fill out a very detailed profile. And then you decide if you see things listed and you decide, oh, that looks interesting, and then go and check out their podcast to see if it's a good fit. But podcasting is really an interesting opportunity. There may not be a gazillion people on a podcast, but if you are in the right audience, with the right audience, people will hear you, and you now have verification about your ability to be a good speaker. So it adds to your credibility. Plus, people buy books that are recommended on podcasts. They will also follow you to buy your services because you're always going to have something easy for people to remember, a URL. So for instance, one of my vanity URLs is bookbuzzaudit.com. So if I wanted to invite people, I'm a guest, I want to invite people to sign up to have a consultation with me, I would use that URL. Now I've got another one that is for my resource page. And so now I've got that available. But you want to make it simple, memorable, and relevant to your audience. So podcasting can really add to your resume. Bret,
Well, I have a question for you, Judy. So
Yeah.
do you view podcasting more as a lead generation mechanism or as a sales platform?
Oh, interesting. I think it's actually both. If you do it right, and I don't separate them out so much. The purpose for me was to get more exposure, and because I want to start to get paid speaking opportunities more frequently. It can be a lead generator because you're getting people to come. Well, hang on a second. Let me bring up my little goodie here, and then I'll share my screen. When people come here, I'm just going to share this. When people come to your landing page, they should only be able to do one thing. So right here, so you see my Book Buzz audit. So if I referred people to that, they're going to come, and here's the landing page, and all they can do here basically is they can sign up for a time to talk to me. Now, what I've heard and what I decided made more sense, I have a different landing page that I'm now going to be using. And let me go to that. Oh, I think I've got it hidden. So I've got to actually type in the URL for that. I created one called Freebie. And so that way I don't have to remember each time I'm going on a different podcast, what's my offer. I can just say, go to bookmarketingmentor.com/freebie. That's easy. And currently I've got several different things on here. So I've got this offer, monetize your book while you sleep. But do you notice what I've got here? I have an opt-in form. So I'm not just giving you the goodie. You have to tell me who you are in your email. So if you're not already on my email, you're going to get added to it. If you are on my email, I'm still happy to give you the goodie. But this is what you want to do. You don't just want to give people stuff without capturing them into your community. So I've got several things on this page currently. So I've got the monetize your book. I've got how to get more Amazon reviews. And depending on which thing is attractive, when people go to that page, they can pick the lead magnet or lead magnets that they want. So it's generating more people into my community. And typically what will happen now they're in my list, now they're in my world, and now I can continue to nurture them. And down the road, I will make an offer. But only about 10% of the time am I going to be saying, oh, you can buy something. It's mostly education, conversation. This is something that will help you. So that's how I look at it. But it is really critical, if you all pay attention on your website, you should have something that attracts eyeballs and makes people curious so that they can now get into your world. And when you're speaking speaking from the stage or in a webinar like this, you want to make it so that people can go and get that. But if they are not interested, they're not interested. That's okay. You really don't want people in your email list who are just kind of on the fence. You want people who are really genuinely wanting what you are offering to them. And then if they don't feel like it's a fit, they can opt out. So did that answer your question, Bret?
In a long way, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Well, obviously podcasting is just one of the, possible venues for you as a speaker, but, being a successful speaker is really about getting gigs, as they say. And there are any number of resources. Obviously, you need to be proactive if you're going to get gigs, or have somebody on your team who's proactive for you. I mean, I know there are VA virtual assistants out there that specialize in helping people get booked on stages.
Right.
There's, if you're a keynote speaker, there's dozens and dozens of speaker bureaus out there, although word of warning, they typically are going to push their high ticket keynote speakers. So your chance of getting featured if you're just starting out are not quite as good. But you have speaker bureaus out there. You have online resources such as Speakertunity from Jackie Lappin. You have online, as Judy mentioned, Podmatch to help match you up with podcasts. I mean, there are people out there who specialize in helping, getting gigs, but most of them are paid services, and you got to decide what's, right for you in terms of your time, your effort, your budget, et cetera, to get gigs. But sitting back and waiting for people to find you is a quick recipe for failure, frankly. You've got to be proactive. So.
Well, and that's true about people finding your book. The likelihood, just because you publish a book and it's available for sale, that people are just going to go, oh, I want that book. You're competing against about 2 million new books every year. So if you can picture in your mind, close your eyes for a second, picture in your mind 2 million new books, and then stack those on top of 2 million books from last year, and 2 million from the year before. And pretty soon, you're probably seeing this mountain of books. So being able to stand out in all of that means you've got to do something to get people's attention. And speaking is one of the ways that you do it. And you do need to be proactive. You do need to really make it easy for people to find you. Be sure, being sure you're in the right category, being sure that you're showing up in front of the people who need your book, who would need and like your book. And that's true for any genre. It's not just about nonfiction. It's not just about children's books. It's not just about self-help books. It is about who would be interested and where are the conversations happening. And, well, for instance, Jeannie writes about women during World War II, pilots and, like Rosie the Riveter. So there are genealogy groups, there are historical groups, there are women's rights groups. You start going, okay, what's my book about? What are 3 big themes in there? And where are those people hanging out? And where could I show up as a speaker to augment what they know? So that's how I approach book marketing altogether. And speaking is just a really good way.
Speaking is great because it's one to many versus one to one. And the more eyeballs you can get in front of, the better. It was interesting this morning, Judy. I was actually doing some Amazon research for the new book, for the author questionnaire I need to fill out. And while there was dozens and dozens of books about becoming an effective speaker, I had to search long and hard to find any books about building a speaking business. So I'm thinking, is this a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing because that's the thing too. If you're doing an event, do you want to be one of a group of people who are all the same, or do you want to be the unicorn? Do you want to be the one that stands out? I'm an advocate. I love bookstores, but you know what? One of my friends, Rebecca Rosenberg, who is both a historical fiction author and a nonfiction author. She's also a champagne geek. So where do you think she's done a bunch of her book talks? At wineries. Because she is one author at a winery. So she has a captive audience. She can connect her book to that market and she stands out. And because of that's just one of her strategies, not only doing that, she has sold 20,000 copies of one of her books, and the one that just came out this year, 14,000. And most of you know that this statistic. Most authors sell about 250 books. And you know how many people are in your immediate circle? About 250. So just saying, if you can stand out, that is a brilliant way to distinguish yourself. And being a confident speaker is really, it's really knowing your stuff and listening to your audience.
Yeah. Speaking is so important for people in so many walks of life. I mean, we're talking about authors here, but anytime a businessman really should add speaking to their mix in some way to establish themselves as an expert. But, getting on platforms is very important, but it's really, really important to get on the right platforms. And one of the things that I think I see speakers very weak in is really looking at the demographics of an audience before they accept a speaking engagement. I mean, is it men or women? What age are they? What's their educational background? If it's a corporate event, who are the movers and shakers that are going to be in the crowd that you can tie into your talk somehow? I mean, you've really got to look at the demographics and know who the audience is so that you can craft that speech appropriately to best fit in with meeting their needs. I mean, I think a speaker who, and I've seen it many times, Judy, and I'm sure you have too, is they have one canned presentation and they do the same presentation every time. They never customize it whatsoever. And just with a little bit of effort, you can make it more focused for the group that you're speaking to and get a better result. So I would customize always a little bit if it was me, but to each his own. So
You're bringing up a really good point. Suzanne Rowan is the author. Her first book was How to Work a Room. And I met her back in the early 2000s. She's, under 5 feet tall. She's really tiny. And what I saw her do, we were at an event. There were about 125 people in the room. And before she was going to get up on stage, she went from table to table because it was a luncheon. And she said hi to the people she already knew. And the people she didn't yet know, she found what she had in common with them. So when she got up on stage, she had a room full of friends. And you can do that no matter where you're speaking or how you're speaking, whether it's in the room or on Zoom, you can find out more about your audience. And as Bret said, if you do that, yes, you have a core message, but if I'm going to make something up right now because none of you fall into this category. But if you were all tax preparers, we could customize what we're doing right now for tax preparers. Partly because I was one. Yeah, I have a checkered background here. But if we did that, then what happens is people can identify, just like in your books. If people see themselves in your stories, nonfiction or fiction, if people see themselves when you're speaking, then they're riveted because it's right for them. And it doesn't take a lot to do the research ahead of time. And as you're saying, same thing with Podmatch. If you don't know all of those answers on the demographics and psychographics of your audience, you'll wind up spinning your wheels. But at first, just getting the experience of speaking is your goal. Then you want to be more targeted and spend your time where you're going to get the most out of it. So, I think that always applies. I think that's very, very important.
yeah,
And then I was just going to say, and then you want to measure your results.
well, and that's, I was just going to say, and metrics is so key in this industry. I mean, we're right on the same thought wave there. I mean, when you go into an event, and this mainly applies to people selling from the platform, obviously, in terms of metrics, because there's going to be paid their fee, and they, may or may not, usually not have any kind of back end offer type thing. But somebody who's a fee speaker selling from the platform, you've got to really analyze your results over time to see what's working and what's not working. And most speakers are very weak on their metrics. I mean, I was at an event a few years ago, and there's obviously one of the key numbers you're going to keep track of at this event is how many attendees were there. But attendees doesn't mean what we call buying units. I mean, the event I was at was a group primarily of homeschoolers or whatever, and there's maybe 100 people in the room or whatever. But when when you boil it down, by the time you subtract it out, the spouses and the kids and all that, there was maybe 20 buying units in the room. So you got to keep that in mind when you're analyzing your results. And another thing you got to keep in mind is when you're dealing with event promoters, I'm not saying that they're dishonest, but I'm saying they're overly optimistic in terms of the number of people they can actually put in a room. So if somebody says that they're going to have an event for 500 people, if you walk in the room, don't be surprised if there's 100 people or 125 people. I mean, like I said, they're just overly optimistic. Same is true of virtual events. I mean, they tell you how many people they think they're going to have, and you only get a portion of that to show up. And you got to remember that anytime you offer an event online, if you get a 30% show rate, especially if it's a free event, you're actually probably right in the average of the industry. So,
yeah. Well, that leads to why it's important to build your email list. We all know that there's social channels, and there's been a lot of conversation about that in the news the last couple of days, because what's happening? Twitter just is going through a major, oh, we're firing this many people. Now Facebook just announced we're firing this many people. Salesforce firing this many people. So, remember, those are platforms. Now with Salesforce, you own your database, the people who subscribe. But with Facebook and Twitter, that's rented space. So the real thing you want to be doing is building your link directly to those people who are interested in what you're doing and getting them on your email list, because that you do have control over. You have no control. You can influence, but you do not have, you don't own Facebook, you don't own Twitter. Those people are there by choice, but the algorithms can change. The ownership can change, all this stuff. So if you just build your stuff on social, you may not be real happy in the end, but you do want to use it as a way to get people from those social conversations into your conversation where you can have more influence and more engagement.
Well, and right along with that, Judy, if you're speaking from the platform where you're going to be offering your book or something else, you're crazy if you drive that traffic to Amazon to buy your book, because it's Amazon's customer and not your customer. So you really need to drive them to your website to buy your book. That way, maybe they can get a personally signed copy, obviously. So there's a little value added there,
Right.
But you're the one that then captures the customer information to market your back-end products and services too. So if you're ever speaking from the platform, do not send them to Amazon or Barnes and Noble to buy your book.
Absolutely not.
And I agree.
Yeah. And you know what? Old school, if you're in a room, pass around a sign-up sheet, for heaven's sakes. Do not get stuck about, oh, it always has to be electronic. Now, that's my preference because I can't always read people's handwriting. But if you are anywhere, you want to make it easy for people to give you their information. And sometimes people are ready to buy right that minute, and maybe they aren't, virtual or in person. But if you say, if you want to stay in touch, you're asking for permission. This is permission-based marketing. You're asking for permission. And so, for instance, I just signed up for a program. I met the speaker, I think 3 years ago. I wasn't ready yet, but she kept in touch with me over email. And then I would see she'd have events and, I would go to them sometimes. And I was ready now. So she nurtured me for 3 years in a genuine way. She wasn't being a shark, and she's not looking for massive numbers. And she limits how many people go into her program. But, had she taken the no at that door, she would have missed out on me buying a higher item than I might have at the beginning. And that's frequently what happens. So you want to have offers for people. So you have a book. So the book is the first place they can go. But then you want to have other things that they can, so they like you, they want to buy more. They want to get more stuff. And that's true. It's easier to make a sale to someone who has purchased from you in the past than it is to make a brand new sale. And what Bret was saying, if you're going to an event, you want to make sure you are bringing books with you so that people can buy them from you. Or if you're doing it virtually, you can decide how you're doing that too. And it's becoming easier and easier to sell directly to the consumer from your website. And you've got to pay attention to that because things are going to be changing. I mean, they already are changing, but it's important. And, just like when you have a lead magnet, which is something that attracts people into your community, when they buy your book, they're giving you their email. They're saying, I trust you. Here's my email. And that means you can continue to talk to them so that when you have the next book, that's when you have a bigger community and you can have more people come in. And if you're speaking, the same thing. Word gets out also. If you are a prima donna, people aren't going to refer you to another opportunity to speak. You want to show up, be prepared, be generous. And sometimes that means you're going to fill in at the last minute because something went wrong. Somebody got sick, somebody got stuck in the airport, and boom, they say, we've got a hole right here. Can you do it? What's the answer? Yes, and improv.
So yeah, this is what I like to call the back pocket speech. And you've got to be prepared at any point in time to be able to step up and speak maybe in a second slot at an event. Obviously, we're talking multi-speaker events here, but I mean, a few years ago, I was at an event and watched a friend of mine get carried away in an ambulance, and the event promoter was in a panic because he was scheduled to be the next speaker on the agenda. So he said, oh God, what am I going to do? How am I going to fill this slot? How am I going to keep my audience happy and deliver content and all that? And you can be the hero here, obviously, if you're prepared to step up and help them fill in that slot. Not only does it ingratiate you to the promoter, so when they do future events, you're at the top of their mind to bring back and speak again, but also it gives you more face time with that audience. So you can build better rapport. And so if you're selling from the platform, your chances of having greater success go up considerably because they have had a even greater chance to know, like, and trust you. So you got to have that back pocket speech. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, Judy, before we run out of time here is,
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about, speaking from an event and capturing the information and all that. Just be very careful as a speaker that anything you're wanting to do on somebody else's stage, you have their permission to do.
Yes.
So, I mean, one of the things that event promoters frown on greatly is what we call harvesting the list. And that's, if they're expecting you to make a high ticket offer where they're going to jointly profit with you, and then somebody comes to the stage and they just says, hey, go to this website and download my free report. And they're just trying to basically grab all the names of the people in the room, and then they're not promoting anything else. They're not going to be very popular with the promoter. So,
No.
it's not a prima donna per se in this situation, but it's somebody who's trying to use the promoter in a way that is incongruent with the promoter's wishes. So,
Ooh.
I mean, if you want to just sell a book and nothing else, we really need to run that by the promoter ahead of time, because they probably would prefer you have a higher ticket item.
I would agree with you on that. And yes, it's always good to know the rules of the road of where you are and be respectful. Yeah. I've seen exactly what you said. And in fact, we invited back a team to come and speak to one of the groups that I was on the board of. And the second time, you know what they did for the whole presentation? It was sales. They were selling their stuff the whole time. Do you think they made any sales? Upkus.
Yeah.
They didn't get any.
As a general rule, if you're delivering content on the stage, your foremost obligation is to deliver great content for the audience. And in my opinion, the sales portion of a presentation should be no more than 15% at the most. So 85% of your time ought to be solid content. 10 to 15% ought to be your offer for whatever higher end ticket item that you have.
I totally agree with you. And yeah, and the ones that are salesy, people, I've seen it my whole life. When people push sales, folks don't buy. Maybe they're getting one or two people where they could have gotten an entire room, and it just doesn't play well. It doesn't play well.
And I think you also have to deliver, quote, the meat, so to speak. I mean, I've seen speakers who were very entertaining and they got the audience stirred up, and a lot of people bought their program, but there was no content delivered. And it almost started happening immediately after the event, refund.
Ooh.
So their stick rate was terrible, because when it got down to it, when you really boiled it down to it, while they were a winning personality and everything and persuasive, they weren't delivering any real content. And people, finally recognized that, and then, disassociated themselves with the speaker at that point in time.
Yeah. I'm thinking of something that all of you can do, because I know all of you are authors and some of you have new books coming out, and maybe you're revising a book. Just as we learned to include a request for a review in our books, and if you haven't done that and want to know more about that, talk to me later. But when you know, in your about the author section, there should be an about the author. There should be how to contact you. Well, now you're going to include you are available for speaking engagements and how to get in touch with you. And maybe you're going to put the link to your media kit or to your speaker one sheet. And if you look in the chat, I've included some samples. I have a checklist, a media kit checklist, and then also a media one sheet checklist, plus a sample. Now, my sample of my media one sheet is in progress. So this, I was working on this. I had totally different colors. This is not the end deal, but it will give you an idea of what goes in it. You're making a document that is downloadable and shareable. You're making it easy for people to read it. You can see that there are similarities in what goes in your media kit and what goes on your media one sheet. And a media one sheet is designed exactly for that. It's when you're proposing that you're going to be a speaker. So it's not about, here's my products and services. Here's me as a speaker, and here's what you can expect. And so, for instance, here are my hot topics. I have 5 mistakes. Oh, I have to update this. I'm sorry. It's actually 7 mistakes. 7 mistakes authors make that stop their books from selling and what to do instead. So that's one of my key speeches. Sorry. Another one is reboot your book, get seen and get paid. And then one of my favorite ones is 7 ways to monetize your book. So right there, you've got an idea. Oh, that's what I talk about. There's a small bio, about 50 words. So that's on one side. Oh, and here we can look at that together. I'll grab that over here. Yes, it's the multiple screen thing again. So here we go. So in my one sheet, here is my bio is on the side. I've got a picture of me. This is a working picture. This is not my final one, but there's a nice headshot. It could be a full body shot. There's the bio, how to get in touch with me. You get an idea of what my expertise is. I've got testimonials in here. And then right here, I've got my freebie, because when you're doing stuff, you want to entice people to, follow you. So mine is pretty simple. It's very straightforward, and they should never be more than a front and back. And if you can get it on one sheet, that, on just a front, that's even better.
I'm making a note that I need to make sure I include my freebie on the one that I'm working on.
I know, it's always like, oh, there's always one more thing to do.
I mean, I got the about and my topics and the contact and the social and some things I've done along the way and featured events, but I don't have any offer of a freebie. Shame on me.
Well, I learned that from Nancy Jutton, and she suggested always include something free for people so that they can take the next step. And so if you're asking to be a speaker at an event and they see that you are going to do something like that, that elevates you. That's professional. That is definitely professional. Well, before we conclude, I'm just curious if anybody's got an aha they didn't know before we were having this conversation that can help them with their speaking and book marketing. You already knew everything?
No, there are several things, but none of them were eureka.
Okay.
They were little things. They are important little things, but things that I can do to improve my website. What I did learn here is that I was in the wrong place because I have no rear end big thing, never going to. That's not what I plan to do. I'm just selling books, and I'm happy with the way I'm doing it. What I was looking for was something different. Not your fault. I was looking for a way to expand what I do via Zoom, because I am not prepared yet to go on to, I did with my previous book, I went to bookstores and I actually talked in front of one group of 400 caregivers and things like that.
Mhm.
But during the pandemic, obviously, I didn't do diddly, and I'm still not ready to go into bookstores. So I'm looking for Zoom expansions, and that without a back end.
Well, even without a back end right now, Woody, just what we're doing, you can do a free event, a webinar, and invite people to that. You can do a paid one. And the same talk that you gave to those caregivers, there are caregiver groups online, as I'm sure you know, because you did research when you were, when you were writing the first book and now you're revising it. So there's a lot of opportunities where you can get in front of people who would buy books. And the same strategy that you would use if you were contacting a promoter, you could partner. Andrea Wilson Wood created Cancer U, and that's her podcast and her business after her sister died of liver cancer. And so she said, I want to make this information available to more people. But she started partnering with drug companies, with cancer research outfits, and consequently, she gets paid for a lot of what she does, and you could too. So that's how you could monetize the book about roller coaster. You could monetize that one. With the kids' books, there's some really juicy things you could do there too, because there's a lot of stuff online now for educating kids. And you've got a great book. And also with your articles, other people are looking for ways to monetize what they've written. So you've got the smarts there. You've got the goods. Now the next thing is, how do I then take it to the next level? So does that help?
I think so. I have to
Okay.
absorb it.
Okay. And we can talk, more about it.
Thank you.
How about you, Jeannie? Did you learn something that can help you with your quest, fame and fortune?
Yes, it got my brain going pretty good. So I've always had an email list, but I rarely use it because it takes me 4 to 5 years to produce my next book. And that's just too long. But I got to thinking that I could use the email lists before Christmas time and email people, this is a good time for you to buy any of my books as a present. Because I do have a lot of people buying my books.
Mhm.
as-
How many books do you have, Jean?
I have 4.
Have you ever done a bundled set of your books together at a special price?
I always, I very rarely give a discount, I'm afraid to say.
He didn't say discount. He said bundle. Different
I've had
dynamics.
people buy all 4 and with no discount.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But you know what? When you have a boxed set,
Mhm.
people go, oh, ooh, that is a cool gift. Ha ha ha. So they're going to buy all 4. It's enticing people. It's the same information, but you're now repackaging it. And when you say you haven't been talking to people because it's been 4 years between book 1 and book 2, you
Yeah.
can talk to people about your journey in producing your book. So you're keeping them informed. You're saying, I'm working on the book, and here's what happened. And, I just encountered this, and I just discovered this other thing. So you, just like a friend, I'm your friend. So you're telling me what's going on and
Well,
listening.
I just had somebody buy all for just to give to a Rotary Club raffle.
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah.
she's wrapping them up and they're going to be auctioned off.
That's very cool. That is
I
very cool.
always have really exciting things happen.
Well, see, you could share that. If you sent out an email and said, I am so excited to tell you, here's what's happening. They're buying my book. It's going to be in a raffle. And wow, that made my day.
Yeah.
That's all you'd have to say. So
Yeah.
you're not selling anything. But if I saw that, I went, oh, that might make a good gift. So I'm just planting a seed on that too.
You just triggered a thought. I can offer, mine are very different books and they wouldn't be packaged because they're even different sizes. But I could offer all three at an auction plus a luncheon with me.
Exactly. And Woody, here's a thought. I mean, I have an advantage here since I know you, but okay. So you've got a book for the grandkids. You've got a book for the grownups. And maybe the grownups who want they want the articles, your journalistic stuff, and other people who want the book about your experience with your wife's cancer. So you can do, this is a family bundle. Just saying. You now have a family gift.
Thinking outside the box.
That's my middle name.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, are you still with us?
I don't think so.
Okay. Bret, any last thoughts you want to impart on this crew?
Well, I mean, I think the main thing is to figure out how you can incorporate speaking into your book marketing mix. And I mean, it's just one of many channels, obviously, and you've got to decide what works and what doesn't work for you, for your lifestyle, for your, financial wishes, etc. And there is no magic blue pill or whatever that you're going to take that will make you an industry expert or whatever. It's learning over time and just taking it a step at a time.
I would like to add another tip.
Yes.
I joined the National Women's History Alliance.
Excellent.
And they have a speaker page.
Oh.
I had the National Guard call me up.
Wow.
And I got to speak to the National Guard. And I sold a huge amount of books.
Right. I mean, there's no question that your success as a speaker will primarily be determined by the relationships that you built with people in the industry and outside the industry. So
joining organizations really help.
Yep.
I'm a member of the Pacific Coast Air Museum. Similar kind of things.
Yeah.
But anybody who is writing on a specific topic can look up what organization can I join and support.
You are spot on.
And they support me.
Mm-hmm. And most organizations are looking for speakers. If they have regular events, if they have meetings, if they have conferences, trade shows, they are looking for you guys. You need to find them and let them know you're available. And that's why you want to make sure. And I have to admit this. I mean, Bret, you said this too. I have to fix my online media kit because it's not where it needs to be yet, but it will be because I've been working on other people's. So make it easy, do a little bit at a time. And over time, you're going to cultivate your email list. You're going to get seen on stages. People, if you do a good job, people will refer you to other opportunities to speak. And it is a small industry. And so word gets out. if you're easy to work with and you are prepared, you show up on time, you follow the rules, people will say, oh, did you know you can talk to Jeannie, or you can talk to Woody, or you can talk to Michelle, or you can talk to Bret. They will do a great job for you. And here was my experience. So the more you do it, the better it gets.
Without a doubt.
I think so. And I think we're at the top of the hour. And certainly if you want to continue the conversation with either Bret or myself, get in touch. Bret, why don't you pop your contact information right into the chat so
Sure.
our friends can do this. And I will also be sending you the recording so you can see that. And you can download the media kit and checklist right from chat as well.
Yeah, people can keep up with me at bretridgway.com, or the email is just info@bretridgway.com, and that's Bret with one T and Ridgway without an E. So
Tricky.
I know. Oh, do you think I do it every time? I do it wrong every time. I go, oh, no, I've been trained. Now I'm trained. No, one T, no E. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being with us today. This was a lot of fun. And
Thank you both.
you
I
are
agree.
welcome.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And we'll be doing some more stuff together. We'll be keeping you informed about what that looks like. And there'll be another masterclass in December. So thanks so much. And I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.